Welcome to The Explainer. Our whole mission is to take really complex information and just lay it all out, make it clear and dynamic. And today, we're tackling a massive one.
Okay, let's just dive right in. So, picture this. It's early 2026, and the Department of Justice has just been forced to release a mountain of documents on Jeffrey Epstein. And buried in those files, you find this, an offer for Epstein to get a stake in a mission-critical property just a mile from the Pentagon. I mean, wow. So what we're going to do here is walk through a deep forensic analysis of what these hypothetical files might actually reveal about the whole operation.
So how much information are we talking about? Well, get this, 3.5 million pages. To even try to wrap your head around that, it's like reading War and Peace more than 2,000 times. This isn't just a few new details. It's an ocean of data that takes us way beyond the scandal we all thought we understood.
So you get a data dump this massive, and it just forces you to ask the big question. Was this just a criminal ring, or was it something more? Because when you start digging into these files, a really chilling possibility emerges that this whole thing might have been a deniable intelligence operation.
All right, Section 1, the 3.5 million page question. So what exactly is in this mountain of new evidence? Let's break it down.
Okay, so take a look at the sheer scale of this thing. We're talking nearly 3.5 million pages, but also over 2,000 videos, 180,000 images. I mean, it's insane. And what's really important here is where it all comes from. This isn't just one case file. It's everything. The New York and Florida cases against Epstein and Maxwell, the FBI's materials, the Inspector General's investigation, even public tips. It's the first time all of these pieces have been put together in one place, giving us the most complete picture we've ever had.
Okay, moving on to Section 2. So this deep dive into the files suggests the whole network really had two main jobs. The first one? Well, it's a classic spy tactic, the honey trap.
So the first big function appears to be all about generating kompromat. That's the Russian term for compromising material. Photos, videos, documents, anything you can use for blackmail. And when you think about it, the analysis argues that Epstein's whole setup was the perfect machine for this. You've got these secure private properties, a constant stream of powerful guests, and of course, the systematic abuse. It was literally the perfect architecture for a blackmail operation.
Okay, so if this was an intelligence op, the billion-dollar question is, who was running it? Now, the files don't just hand us a name on a silver platter. Instead, the analysis points to two main theories, the Mossad vector and the CIA vector. The Mossad idea hinges on the alleged intelligence connections of Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell. The CIA theory, on the other hand, is built on a known pattern. The CIA has a long history of using these kinds of front organizations for sensitive projects. The key thing to remember is that both of these are just hypotheses, built from circumstantial links and patterns of tradecraft.
Now, it's really important to look at the official story here. In July 2025, the DOJ comes out and says they did an exhaustive review and found no credible evidence of blackmail. Period. A flat denial. But, and this is a big but, the analysis points out that this denial came right after months of that same administration hinting that a client list did exist. So you've got this really weird conflicting message, which makes the official story, well, pretty murky.
All right, Section 3. Now, what if the blackmail was just one part of the puzzle? The analysis suggests a second and maybe even more surprising function, the network as a high-tech idea farm. See, Epstein's donations to science weren't just random acts of philanthropy. They were incredibly targeted. The analysis calls it a theory of control. He was laser-focused on domains that offer pathways to fundamental control over our world. Genetics, which you could call the hardware of life, and consciousness, the software. He was funding the people who were trying to crack the code of reality itself.
And this right here is a perfect example. Take a look at this workshop from 2006, Confronting Gravity. I mean, you've got Stephen Hawking, multiple Nobel laureates. It's a who's who of theoretical physics. But if you scan down the list, there's one name that just doesn't quite fit. Edward Thomas Jr. While everyone else is a theorist, he's an experimental plasma physicist. He's the guy who actually builds things.
So why is that one guy such a big deal? Well, because his specific field, experimental plasma physics, is all about hands-on work with things like fusion energy and advanced propulsion. Real-world, potentially world-changing tech. His presence suggests this wasn't just a gathering for chalkboard equations. It was about connecting all that brilliant, abstract theory to concrete, high-tech applications.
Okay, so Section 4, the clandestine machine. We've talked about the what, the honey trap, and the idea farm. But now for the how. How in the world do you run and fund an operation this complex and keep it hidden?
Well, the financial setup was, to put it mildly, brilliant. Let's just look at the relationship with billionaire Leslie Wexner. You've got this bizarre repayment loop. Wexner's money goes to Epstein's foundation, Wexner then says Epstein stole it, and then Epstein repays Wexner with Wexner's own money, just laundered through the foundation. It makes absolutely zero financial sense. The analysis argues this was just a really clever cover story to inject a massive amount of capital into Epstein's network.
And this whole financial machine was purpose-built for secrecy. It was a masterclass in how to hide things in plain sight. First, you've got jurisdictional arbitrage, setting up shop in the U.S. Virgin Islands, which is legally part of the U.S., but administratively a headache to investigate. Then you have an offshore black box in Bermuda, where huge sums of money can just disappear from view. And to top it all off, you get political access. Epstein's own office manager was the first lady of the USVI. You couldn't design a more protected system.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, the firewall. Because any deniable operation needs deniable operators. And the final piece of this puzzle was a very small, very insulated group of pros who made the whole thing tick.
Right at the heart of the whole network, you find two guys, attorney Darren Indyk and accountant Richard Kahn. And these guys weren't just outside contractors, they were the core. And here's the kicker. Just 2 days before Epstein's death, they were made co-executors of his estate. That put them in total control of everything, the money, the assets, and most importantly, the secrets.
So on paper, they're just a lawyer and an accountant. But the analysis suggests their real jobs were much bigger. Think of them as the network's chief operating officer and chief financial officer. Indyk, the lawyer, built the legal firewall. Kahn, the accountant, managed the corporate veil. Together, they made sure the whole enterprise was bulletproof and deniable.
And this right here is probably the most critical takeaway from the entire analysis. After searching everything, there are 0 verifiable links between Indyk or Kahn and any intelligence agency. And you might think, well, that's a dead end. But in the world of espionage, that's the whole point. A traceable link would be a catastrophic failure of tradecraft. So the analysis concludes that this complete lack of a link isn't a failure to find one. It is the proof. It's the signature of a pro job built to be untraceable from the very start.
So in the end, these new files are incredible. They let us map out the what, the honey trap and idea farm, and the how, the brilliant financial and legal machine. But that professional firewall, it held, it did its job. And that leaves us with the one final massive question. Who was the principal? Who was really pulling the strings? And that is the question we're left with.